Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere. Today, a bit of a discussion video applying it to the maps and talking about the simple possibilities that Dylan Rounds was just left out in the open. Seems a little bit ridiculous to some people this late on in the case, but I guess we can talk about it. It was actually Corbin that mentioned it in most recent time on one of my previous videos in the comment section. So that's what we're going to do today. We can apply it to the maps, and I can also just hover about, and at any point when looking on the maps, say stop. Well, you can't say stop because it's not literal live stream, but you can maybe leave a timestamp in the comment section of a certain area of interest or which has never been checked out before, along the lines of that. You can share your thoughts and opinions as we do go throughout this video on the right hand side, the chat box too, right? I also want to provide a little bit of a intro to this video as for like an update on where things stand, Dylan Rounds related and other stuff in between, right? We don't need to look back at the comments of the last video because there wasn't that many comments, and it's not to do with Dylan Rounds, it was to do with the Idaho 4 case, okay? So it definitely seems like the Dylan Rounds case has gone mostly quiet now, completely. And maybe it doesn't help with some YouTube channels out there being shut down over time who may have covered the case at some point. You're not going to get them returning back now because the channels aren't there. So it kind of like limits it all down. Whilst the positives might be for a certain channel out there, the concentration and focus is on a particular someone, that the rest of the audience goes to that spot. That's a positive in its own right, but obviously the negative would be you haven't got anyone to bounce off from when it comes to certain ideas or coverage. But at the end of the day, some things have gone wrong with people because of what they've done or what they've been caught up in. It is what it is. Maybe because of true crime in general, it just attracts certain types of personalities which can impact others. But in my opinion, I'd say besides this video, there really isn't anything else to cover on the Dylan Rounds case at this moment in time, unless there's past events that need to be looked at, covered. At least from what I can remember, I've covered most of them. And the last one what I did was the fishing visit, which supposedly happened. Not enough proof to say it did happen, but it was just something to look back on, right? And maybe make sense of it, right? There'll be times where you'll get rumours and they might fade away. They might never be reinforced. There might never be any proof to say, yes, it happened. But you don't mean to say that, it's complete BS. Maybe certain evidence never comes out to reinforce an event or action displayed by someone because in the eyes of other people that might have the information, they don't see it as relevant to the Dylan Rounds case. So that information, evidence never gets put out there. So you're kind of in a lose-lose situation, right? You could be looking at things, go down a deep rabbit hole, waste of time, or you could just let it pass on by and there's no clear up or any acknowledgement because other people don't think it links. So what you can do in between when you might not have all of the material, all of the proof, evidence, you can just theorize and maybe use common sense. The idea of a fishing trip doesn't sound that impossible, right? Even if it is the day after Dylan's death, let's say. Maybe it's a form of distraction. Maybe it's just to get away from the area. Maybe it's some kind of alibi. I don't know. Or is it a ploy, a decoy to actually go elsewhere and dispose of Dylan? Was that what it was actually meant for? Then you look at the background of the individuals. Have they participated in fishing before? Yes, no. Oh, they have? Well, it seems more than likely that they would do something like this, right? And the people that were involved, are they friends with one another? Yes. Don, Brenner, well, they're going to do activities together, most likely. So sometimes you can just use common sense to, understand these supposed events which happened at points at times. Now, if there are any other events or rumours of events that did happen, that have been forgotten about or need recovering, list them down below in the comment section. As you know, I've not really involved myself too much with all the rumours and BS, so I wouldn't know of all of those which have happened. But the likes of Tom, shout out to Tom, who's mentioned some events or what he's heard from, and then I've heard about it, and then I've covered it in a controlled way, right, without it causing any harm to the case itself. So if we can keep that up, that's good. If not, that's fine. So then, if that is the case, where does one go then? Well, to be honest, Idaho 4, there's coverage there. It's still ongoing, but I just don't have the depth or range with that case. To deep dive into it right now seems a bit unrealistic and deep waters. There's room for error, room for mistakes, and room for credibility being damaged. I don't want to risk that, okay? Sure, you can do like research, right? Take some time out from YouTube, research into the Idaho 4 case, but is it really worth it? Is it efficient? No, because it's so long gone in the sense of from start to where we are now, and a lot's happened since. So to make sense of it all, to catch up on it, might take some time, and it'll probably be stuff that other people already know of because the case has been covered quite extensively, right? Like, that's why I stick with the news articles, right? Bit boring and bland, true, but don't want to mess up, right? With the other cases, which maybe a bit more mystery or a certain type of environment, you can kind of go in autopilot at times, but you can also, I don't know, think outside of the box, right? If it's similar to what you've previously done. The Idaho 4 case, I've never really covered anything like that before, right? And when I did eventually look into it, it was significantly later on in 2023. So you get what I'm saying. The bit that does interest me is to do with the DNA of the unknown males, the 3 males, but I don't know if it would be possible to be able to look into that area and go deeper there. Where would you start? Is there any photos of the glove? You know, bits and bobs like that. But maybe to do that type of stuff, you need to know the background overall of all the other things. And because I haven't, it's not really that effective. So you get the idea of things. As well, statistically speaking, you know, covering Idaho 4, it's worth doing every now and then, but every day or almost on a day-to-day basis, it's just not effective. And as well, there'll already be people covering it out there. So it's not like you're in a position where you have to spread awareness or where you feel like you have to keep a case alive. It will remain alive for sure, as well as some others here and there, okay? As for the coverage of some conflict and controversy going on out there, you know, I've covered that in recent time because there's not been any breaking news elsewhere, you know, being honest. And it was a different style, it was a different theme, it was a different like topic, but still relevant to the true crime community because these YouTubers are a part of the true crime community, right? And I'll be honest, when covering the Zav girl situation, that would be a perfect example of going in a unnecessary direction which could draw unwanted attention to you, which then could harm your channel and it could actually backfire and just mess it all up. That's why I only, you know, I don't want to use the word involved because it sounds like bandwagon. It's the only reason why I appeared and covered it, because I can show balance and I've maintained it for quite some time. So whilst everyone else is jumping on in at the deep end, I can just, you know, wedge myself into the middle and see where everything is at. And you know, you can call it training, you can call it resistance, you can call it experience. With what we've encountered in the Dylan Rounds case with those people out there and further afar, it worked there, so maybe you can apply it to the Zavgirl situation. And obviously in the background, people do say that drama is the key to success with some people out there when it comes to channels. As for my experience, covering drama does not lead to success with me, okay? Maybe the odd video might have a bit of a burst in performance compared to what I might do on a regular basis, but I wouldn't say I've noticed a pattern in a positive direction. But at the same time, there's not been a negative pattern in which it's brought in a sudden dark force. That hasn't happened either. So it's kind of neutral. And when it's neutral, not really high priority either. But probably a bit more unique and outside of the box compared to the Idaho 4 case, that's what I'd say. As for the Aidan Clune one, that's probably got a bit more depth and a bit more interest or intrigue behind it compared to Idaho 4, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But is there enough material to work off from the Aidan Clune one? Probably, yeah, another example of where you might have to do a bit more researching. Because, yes, you can rely on the maps and do so much, viewing there at the different spots or potential areas. But it's always good to have the knowledge of a case, the backstories of certain events, that then you can apply it to the maps and know key areas. Or you can just talk about it as you go along, narrating, instead of saying, oh, look, there's a little mountain, there's a big rock, there's a few trees. You get what I'm saying? That's why I've not done an overhaul when it comes to the maps of Aidan Clune. I've done maybe a total of 3 or 4 videos pushing it, right? Within reason. Dylan Round's case, one of the perfect examples for knowledge of the case, but also the maps as well and the experience from the Kenny Veach days. So you see the direction it's returning back in. Like, I'm just going to say it, if something unexpected happens in the Dylan Rounds case, there's a sudden twist or turn out of nowhere, a new event, burst of information, long overdue in a way, then Dylan Round's coverage. But at this moment in time, it's more focused in the mindset of Kenny Veach M Cave, and there is things that can be covered there, right? Is there a transition process needed? Short term, a day or two, just get thoughts back together. Where do I go, or where do I start first? Transitioning from one case to another suddenly, even if you've covered it before, can be difficult. I mean, it's just like an example, but Zav Girl, at a time when she spent so long away from the case and then returned back, may have been March the 3rd or before that, 2023. Zav Girl was covering something in the Dylan Rounds case, some official news, and she said, oh, I'm a bit rusty here. I don't know what's going on. What's all this about? So you could tell, even an established channel like her, but then again, she does cover a lot of cases, returning back to something you might have covered quite a bit. You can't just expect to get into it smoothly like that. I mean, when it comes to lifting weights, you do it for so long, you get used to it, and then you suddenly stop, and then you eventually return back. It can be difficult to get back into it. People say muscle memory, but that doesn't always exist. When I've played video games, I've played them extensively, and then I've returned back at a later point, and I'm almost on the verge of having dementia because I've completely forgotten how to play. But obviously that reality isn't really mentioned, maybe because some humans are delusional or other people are just lucky and better off. But, realities differ from one another. So yeah, it must be likely Kenny Veach M Cave coverage, because I know what I'm doing there. And obviously you want to be in a position where you know what you're doing and you find it interesting as well, because you don't really fill those slots, then what's the point, right? So what about if you skip ahead way in the future or whenever, then you get to that point, if there's a checkpoint within the Kenny Veach case where one is at now, then likely it would be just going to a completely new case. Now, not that I need to right now, but I wonder what is the most effective way when it comes to covering a mystery case or a true crime mystery case, or just true crime in general. At a point in time when you are ready to transition into a new case, are you going into a brand new, fresh case, or one that might be really old, long-standing, or one in the middle, right? With the Dylan Rounds case, I joined, maybe a month or so late. Not that far behind, okay? But to be fair, as for the catch-up, it seemed like there was quite a bit of catching up that needed to be done, but I wasn't able to do it immediately. People in the chat right now, have you ever felt like you've had to play catch-up? Have you been away from the case for a little bit? Or have you just joined? researching into the case late? Did it feel like it took time to catch up with everything, to be up to date? Because maybe there has been a lot of talk, maybe not all of it true, but there's been a lot of talk, right? Not so much now because people have moved away and faded out, but at a point, quite vocal, okay? And I think trying to understand it all, it's messy. But I'll tell you one positive, okay? The only positive is, if you join a case at a particular point, mid-range or late, and not too much has been solved, but there is a lot of talk and a lot of rumours, right? You can be excused for making mistakes. So if you suddenly join on in and you don't do all the research immediately, or you think outside of the box, think for yourself, theorise, it might seem like you're detaching away from the case and you might get called out for it, right? That's what happened to me in the early days. And there was a lot that I supposedly didn't know of back then, which I supposedly should have known. But then down the line, it turned out it was a load of BS. So there was a leniency, a level of leniency there. But then when you look at the Idaho 4 case, okay, there's a bit more structure to it. Maybe not entirely, but there's a bit more structure to it. So I guess if you're joining really early into a brand new fresh case, there's levels of leniency because you don't know the full story yet, nor do they, whoever's involved in the case. You get updates day to day or week to week. You know, you're ahead of the game, if you want to call it that, in terms of understanding and knowledge about a case, right? But if you join late, mid-range, it's probably best to join one where there's a level of leniency and not as much cutthroat, you know, where if you do mess up, you're not completely screwed. Now, the way I'm wording it, I don't know if I'm talking in third person to myself or if it's advice to other people covering true crime. I don't know. But then again, it could apply to anyone at a point, right? But it's like, I don't know how many videos when I think of it, like, there'll be times where I've got a notepad, not physical on mobile, an actual notepad with ideas of videos, right? And it'll be like a range of different stuff, like 4 to 5 at a time, but not always. But majority of the time, I'd say that it's like an idea on the spot, right? You wake up and at some point in the day, then you get the idea. Or when you feel it's time to make a video, but you've got no clue what to do, you just think a little bit. Not too hard, just think a little bit, and then you start getting an idea. But then, how do I attach it or link it onto something so there's decent, valid length, and there might be additional links to be made as well. Quite a lot of constructing that goes on, and sometimes reverse engineering as well, right? But like when I tried it today, it was like the mind was completely dead when it comes to, you know, was there any bits or bobs that needed to be covered? Not at all. Were there any small fragments? Not at all. Any big events? Not at all. When it came to the wash, right, I said I was gonna draw a line on it, a red line, and outline it. But in terms of the distance, that was already measured, so there's no real need to do that now. The one time where it was interesting and outside of the box was the weather in Lucin during June. I think it was June. You had the extreme rain short-term burst, which led to flooding in the likes of Montello, Nevada, and as well Lucin wash. So that was different, right? Because not really seen that before. You know, the previous summer didn't seem to be as much flooding, right? But this time there was more, and it was like factors, events that could cause certain possible evidence to shift, move on if anything was dumped in the wash or buried, right? So it's along that lines. But ever since now, it's been kind of flat. But you know, at the end of the day, there's not really been much backup by the people within the case or the police providing updates. Obviously, there might be for good reason. Like they've got to follow a certain procedure, I get that, but you also understand how it's more effective when there's more people or there's more coverage, not an extreme amount, but enough. So times when you make your videos or cover your stuff, other people are thinking or watching, and then they might get an idea, then they take over and do their coverage, and then you sit back, back forth. You know, it's kind of like when it comes to the funny edits, right? When it came to the Kenny Veach case, the community there, some funny edits, it was good to do, but did other people join in? Not really. People did participate in laughing and commenting, which was all good. But as for, actual edits, that never really seemed to happen. But look to the Dylan Rounds case, range of different people doing some edits, short videos, responses, right, in light-hearted ways. That's good, because it gets to a point where it becomes a bit of a weird feeling where you finally stop making a video and spend a bit of time looking at other people's. That's where it feels weird, right? Where you've been doing something for so long, so frequent, and then you see somebody else do the same thing for once, and then you watch and you think, damn, wow. Guess it refreshes you as well, and probably more funny. I mean, when I watch back my videos at the time, like live premieres, the funny ones, the dodgy ones, I do laugh quite a bit. So I must have done something right for me to be able to laugh at my own video, which I already recorded earlier on and knew what it was going to be about when rewatching it. Yeah, it was really funny. And as well, when I do those videos, as well as the dodgy ones, when I'm doing it at the time, I'm not laughing. I'm not thinking this is funny. That never crosses my mind. But when I watch it after, during the live premiere, or when I know it's upcoming, I'm thinking, oh no, this is going to be funny. This is going to be really funny. This is going to be really good. Okay? For the fact of watching it back, viewing it as part of the audience, and then also seeing the reactions of the other people live. That's what makes it more fun, right? And then when you do have the other channels out there, like what would be an example, like Weedleby has done the odd edit, Gorilla Jack, the odd response, Sketchy with his edits, and then some other people, I'm sure, even Guidance just doing her, reactions every now and then to my videos with her group or whoever's active at the time. That's fun to check out as well. So yeah, I think besides it sounding a little bit narcissistic, if you're able to watch back your own videos most of the time and find them either funny or quite good, then must be doing something right. There will be the odd few times though where I'm almost on the verge of falling asleep when watching back my own video and I'm thinking, fucking hell, this is boring. But then again, that's just simply because when doing the video, it's been quite heavy and deep. There's been a lot of text, a lot of reading of information, long comments, like with the Zav Girl scenario. And then watching it all back, it's like, oh, fuck me. That's what it's like, okay? But maybe for those moments, I find it better to focus on the chat, either in a serious way or a bit of a light-hearted way. It'll be different for other people, like viewers in general, because they're watching the video for the first time. So they want to learn about it. Whereas technically, with it being a live premiere, I've already learned what I've learned and then presented it in the video itself. So I already know. So I don't have to pay as much attention or focus to the video itself because I already know what it's about, if that makes sense. So then I can put more time and focus in the chat, right? That's the positive, that's the advantage of live premiere over a live stream. So I like that. Have I done live premieres with the Kenny Veach case? Besides recent time, yeah, I did it in the past. In the early days, it wasn't worth it. It didn't seem worthwhile, but obviously as more people come on in over time and people, hang about, which is really good, then, like when I think of it now, it feels weird uploading a video immediately, right? Upload a video, walk away, come back the next day, check the comments out. That sounds and feels really boring, okay? Doing it as a live premiere, it just seems to work. Is there any disadvantages to live premieres? I personally don't know, okay? I'm not too sure if there are any disadvantages. I upload the short videos in the background. They are uploaded immediately or sometimes scheduled to a certain time, but no live premieres there. It's pointless doing live premieres with shorts, YouTube shorts. Really pointless for sure, okay? I don't know if it does work. Like, it's like, I want to experiment, but in a more natural way. Because if I just say I want to experiment, then it sounds rude and demanding. But some point down the line, are super chats available on short videos? I personally don't know. Okay. As well, just clip a few other things on the spot, because we might as well do it whilst we're here, because as I said, did a recent poll on my channel page and most people wanted it serious. So this goes along the theme of being serious, as well as talking about Dylan rounds later on. But what I wanted to add on in is when it comes to live streams or live video premieres, closed captions, CC, not Candice Cooley, but CC equals closed captions, subtitles, you know, that type of stuff. It doesn't, you know, show during live streams, live premieres. Once it's ended and you rewatch the video, closed captions are then enabled. It's just the way YouTube goes, okay? The odd person was asking about where is the super chat, super thanks button. The one with the symbol of the $sign, which you'd see underneath the channel username, I think on the right hand side or so with the video. That appears there when you upload a video in normal format, and as well when a live stream or live premiere has ended. But during times of when videos are live, premiering live, the super chat, super thanks button ends up moving to the live chat section further to the right, okay, in case you were wondering. The only other thing I want to highlight as a question, and it might sound a bit silly me asking it when I should be the expert here, but when it comes to membership, you know, when someone's become a member, whether it be for the first time or they've rejoined again a bit later on, during a live premiere, let's say, it'll appear on the screen, it'll be like that big green box and it'll say welcome and then the person's username. I get that, they've joined, that's good. Is there any difference between that and then if someone became a member, joined as a member, but said they wanted to become a member for the next 3-4 months, or the next 5 months, or the next 2 months in advance, without having to resubscribe, do it in advance? Would it appear any different in the live chat box? Would it pop up saying, welcome new member for 2 months, for 5 months? Does it work like that or not? Because I just wanted to add it in, and it's happened recently. I think it was Skeptical last night or the night before, and then previous it might have been Moon Mom or something. I can't remember exactly who it was. And the green box thing popped up in the chat and it said member for 7 months. Does that mean they've joined or they've rejoined or they've resubscribed to the membership for the next 7 months? Or does it just simply mean that they've been a member on the channel for the last 7 months? I'm not quite sure, because I'm trying to think of it when it comes to Twitch, the other platform, Twitch, where it says, oh, this person's become a member for 4 months, for 5 months. I don't know how it works with YouTube. I know there was an option on YouTube in the settings where you can enable it, where messages will show up acknowledging if people have been around for some time as a member. So maybe that's all it means, right? Just wanted to see what other people think, if anyone has a better idea, okay? As I said, YouTube can be kind of hard to understand at times, right? They don't always provide the best answers, and obviously with YouTube playing up. Want to know, anyone in the live chat, did anyone experience issues last night in the chat? For me, it happened, okay? I was sending some messages, then it said error, and it just wouldn't work. So I refreshed the screen and then I had a blank chat, couldn't see anyone's name. And then I decided to experiment. I clicked refresh button 15 times or so, like a madman. And then I spammed 3 lots of Warlight Ref whip emojis, and it fixed it all. Round of applause. So it's just proof that not only do the whips fix people's lawnmowers, that the whips or slaps fix people's throats as well. Inky will know that to an extent. But now the whips are fixing the YouTube chat when it glitches out. There we go. So we know what to do for the future. If it does backfire, spam the emoji, the whip one, and it should fix everything. So, you know, these little research studies, little experiments on the spot can be beneficial down the line, right? So, was there anything else to refer back to? I don't know, could probably talk about all kinds of stuff up to now. I might have missed out the odd thing, but just as like an update for the channel and where videos are at this moment in time, and how am I responding or what my thoughts are at the point. But as I said, this video does entail Dylan rounds and there is still a valid discussion to talk about. So I'm going to briefly talk about it now and then maybe apply it to the maps as well, visually speaking. It might not take that long, but there's no harm. So recently, Corbin, individual, been involved in the Dylan Rounds case from the early days and at some point was quite consistent, either with coverage, searches, or jumping upon other people's channels, call-ins, panels, chats, whatever it may be, that type of stuff, right? Do I want to bring up Lance on the spot? Let me just mention Lance very quickly. So, to some people, Lance isn't a good person and there's a bit of badness around him, and some people see him as a scammer, some people see him as a faker, some people see him as maybe an exaggerator, or it may be. I mean, the way I'd see it, right? I normally base it off who causes me trouble and who doesn't. The people that don't cause me trouble, I appreciate the people that cause me trouble, we have a problem, right? Obviously, that can get a bit tricky when someone might be okay with me, but they're not with somebody else that may know me or I know them. Yeah, okay, it gets a little bit messy. And it's just one of those situations where I would have to go through what they're going through to then understand why that person who wasn't causing me trouble originally is now, and why it's annoying to the other person that knows me and I know them. That's literally how it is within this whole community and case, right? With some of the experiences and encounters you have to go through first of all, then you get a better idea, okay? Some of the stuff I've already encountered in the past, right? As I said, so I get the idea of it in a sense. Like with the impersonation accounts, if you're just a viewer, it's annoying anyway, right? It will be annoying. Some people have maybe higher tolerance levels. It's annoying, end of the day, but not that damaging. If you have a channel though, and you actually upload to it, there's more consequences that can come from that if an impersonation account fools and tricks people and then leads to a negative reaction, and then you have to face it all, right? So there is that. Anything else to mention in between? No, I'm doing it on the spot. If you wonder, there's no notes, no bullet points, nothing like that at all. This is like all on the spot, right? But yeah, referring back to Dylan Round's case, Lance Kelly, that's what it was. Do I see him as like an evil, dark person, dark force? No, but then again, you know, I don't really watch lots of Lance Kelly's videos or in the past before the Dylan Rounds case, okay? So I'm not going to know everything. But just in terms of when it does come to times of drama, whether it be him being the drama or the, you know, the coverage of the drama being centered around himself, an action, a finding, a video, does he respond well to that drama? He doesn't really respond. He kind of just keeps doing whatever he's doing, right? And sometimes that probably could be a good thing, right? I mean, yes, I respond to some, but Lance Kelly, you don't really. I remember Lance Kelly saying in the past that he would just let it pass. He keeps on doing what he's doing, but if it kept on going and going and it came to that point where it just had to be cleared, record set straight, then he would. And that's what like happened with the Corbin situation and the Lance Kelly and Candice Cooley fallout. times like then when there was a response, but in between all that, really not that much. I mean, you had that time where Lance Kelly was swatted live when the police showed up. Did we ever come down to the bottom of who was truly responsible? I think everyone was pointing the fingers at Salty Pancakes, if I'm correct in saying. I mean, one thing that I will say just in general, right? And you can't really resist against this because it's arguably a fact, more so a strong observation made over time. And I think quite a few people can relate at the end of the day. You think of Kurt Wadsworth, right, in the Dylan Rounds case, maybe at some point, whether it be now or back then, may have appeared a bit suspicious, potential suspect, knows more than, what he shows public, him not wanting to do this or wanting to do the polygraph test. What you hiding? Are you hiding anything? Scared to fail because it could reveal the truth, right? Maybe over time, there's just not been enough evidence to say Kurt is 100% involved, like really strong evidence. But there have been moments and times where Kurt hasn't done himself any favours, right? If he's been drunk and then not, if information has switched and changed here and there, he's not doing himself any favours. The more you act out, the more you switch and change, the less likely people are either to take you seriously or to trust in what you say. The more dodgy you behave, the more suspicious people will be of you, right? And that's kind of like what happened with Kurt Wadsworth. So you've had that drag-on effect. And when I say drag on, I don't mean a drag act in dressing up as a female. Not quite there, but a bit of a unintentional pun there with Kurt Wadsworth, whatever that's all about. But suspicion has dragged on still to this day with Kurt Wadsworth, partially because of how he's behaved at times. That's where we move on to Salty Pancakes. Based off the factor of that, Salty Pancakes is like Kurt Wadsworth. Okay? Now, to some people, that's going to cause a lot of confusion, and some people get the pants in a twist, but I'll explain it. It's pretty simple. On the theme of messing about, right? Prank calls, in the past, alternative accounts, as he calls it, trolling, prank calls, raids, and anything else in between, writing up little stories, memoirs, fantasizing about stuff, switching and changing, either schizophrenic type like symptoms, a bit paranoid at times, sudden changes, a little bit volatile, labeling, false accusations, slander, a lot of that type of stuff, right? Whether it's happened right here, right now, or in the past, it's at least happened more than once, right? So over time, you become suspicious of these type of people, not to do with being responsible in the Dylan Rounds case, but you just become a bit more wary, right? You think, well, the more you act out, the less likely people are going to listen to you or take you seriously, right? So if someone was doing a lot of pranks, faking this, faking that, changing the narrative, and then down the line they truly find something, and it is a fact, and it is groundbreaking, are people going to listen? Probably not. Because of all the lies told in the past, why should it be any different now? But maybe they are being truthful about everything in the past. It makes it really hard to understand, right, or listen. And then that person ends up having a bit of a tantrum, a fit, a paddy, knick-knack, paddy, whack, give a dog a bone, why don't you just F off home? That's my custom version, okay? But, have a bit of a tantrum, get all defensive. Oh, why are people like this? Oh, why are people calling me this? Oh, why are people acting in this way? Oh, I'm sorry. Which is probably because of how you behaved in the past, right? So it really doesn't help. So you can't blame people for being wary of someone. You can't blame people for being a bit more alert or not as trusting towards an individual. That's what I would say, right? So times where Kurt Wadsworth might come off as a bit dodgy, that can have lasting impressions down the line. So when future things happen, or people reflect back, they might make references which other people get very defensive about. And it's like, well, you can't blame me. Look at what they've done. Look at their track record in the past, right? You can apply that to other people as well. Now, the next thing that follows is the brigade of people that come on and say, oh, you know, when it comes to people's path, you know, don't define them, you know, people's path is the past. It's all about the future, man. It's like, calm down, little hippie sunflower. You know, calm down, Miss Bubblehead. You know, we've seen people reoffend over time. Crime, pettiness, drama, conflict, whatever it is, we've seen constant reoffending, right? You know, you always refer back to Brenner, right? Even at a time where maybe there wasn't a strong amount of evidence to suggest that Brenner was the one to take out Dylan Rounds, people still had it in their mind that Brenner probably is likely the one based off his criminal history and reoffending repeats of it and certain themes, the use of firearms, right? And on that occasion, turned out, seemed to be true, right? Okay, may not always work out that way, but you know, you can't help but look back at the past to see what the patterns are like, right? In a case or just in the community in general. So I just wanted to add that in as well. But returning back to Lance Kelly, from at least what I know of, okay, and it could be limited, Lance Kelly has never attacked me. Lance Kelly has never commented on my channel. Nor do I think he's ever referred to me ever. So it's pretty neutral. Very interesting. Unless any of you've heard of anything, if you've watched along, which I haven't, and something bad has happened, you can leave a comment down below or so, right? But yeah, you get an idea what some people can be like and how they react. I've seen with time the different communities or channels have got their different preferences and methods of offense and defense, right? I might not always be on the receiving end of it, but someone always is. Maybe at times it's my turn and then I see it for what it is, or get the ideas, the patterns, and it just becomes very predictable, right? It's all very well, not all, but some of it is kind of predictable, okay? Like I was tied on with how you might get some people at times which will pull you to the sideline and kind of force you in an unnatural way to side with them or to dislike someone. Yeah, it's like, calm down, we ain't going down that route. But the same with if, you know, I don't know, like, what would be an example? If at any point you had a really whiny individual that was like, oh my god, Woollyraff, you know, you're a really naughty boy. Oh, this is really triggering me. You know, you need to take your videos down because you need to listen to me. It's all about me, my time. You know, I'm the king. You know, you're just a pawn. You know, you're not even starring in any movies because you're just completely dry. My god. You know, it's like a whiny tone where they come up to you and you're the channel owner and they're saying, I want you to take it down, man. I don't think you should be uploading that. That's really bad. You know, it's really offensive. Oh my goodness, you know I do a lot of offensive stuff and I run the show most of the time with insults and complaints and all that, but whenever it's reversed or flipped around the other way, I don't like it, man. Oh, all of a sudden. You know, when someone comes on in and demands for things to be taken down, and it's not even like the main people, it's like, who do you think you are? Excuse me. I mean, some of these videos, or most of them, will incorporate serious coverage of a case, right? Because we do the split down the middle. Focus time on that, then transition onto this. And a portion of it might not be liked by some. Oh well, tough shit. And they come in, take it down, man. It's like, you take it down, you take that down as well. People like that, it would suggest that they don't care about missing people and they actually want, you know, things to be silenced. That's a useless idiot. You drop a pear on your head, you know. I've seen squirrels do that, where they drop a pear on someone's head or eye. It's happened in the past. Near misses with me. I don't know if squirrels are out to kill me, but I think it should be fine. No squirrels inside. Nothing. Actually, to be honest, just to highlight one thing, when I was doing the live premiere one of the nights, and I looked to the side, the door, slide door, a cat tried coming on in. Well, not a cat, the one that's been in the countless interviews now, tried sneaking in, but, you know, can't just let it in because, I don't know, might have a mouse somewhere, or a bit dirty, or, you know, someone else owns it. You don't want to keep hold of it, or it ends up keep coming back and it's just a bit messy. You know, every now and then pops on in, that's fine, but that's about it, okay? So, yeah, I think we've shoveled through all that shit, to be honest. Let's return back to the Ty Corbin situation, okay? Ty Corbin's videos, had there been about Dylan rounds recently? Not so much. His latest one, I believe, was searching for Dylan, but he said he wasn't going to give the name of the location. My question is, why? Is it because other people have infiltrated those spots with your previous ones and it's caused trouble? Is that it? Let me know your thoughts, Ty Corbin, down below if you are watching. But Ty Corbin said in one of my recent videos, along the lines of, you know, has anyone thought that maybe Dylan was just simply left out in the open and nature took its course and animals scattered his bones simply like that? As simple as that. What do I think about it? Well, I think one thing for sure, it's time to go onto the maps and begin this short story, okay? Here we are back on the map around Lucin area. I think we do have some markers on here, a bit dodgy to be honest, but we'll just leave them there, leave them be. Forget about the Don Hatley marker, okay, ignore that. But yeah, in Lucin. So, tying it on with Ty Corbin, tying with Ty. That sounds interesting, that wording. But yeah, I can understand simplistic thinking. Just like how I understand thinking outside of the box. You think outside of the box, you'll come up with stuff no one else has thought of before. And it can be effective at times and it can unlock, you know, new possibilities and outcomes. When it comes to simplistic thinking, that's definitely most effective at times where you might be dealing with a very deep, immersive case where at times people will overcomplicate things and it will take it away the focus from the reality. And sometimes just by using common sense and thinking on a simplistic tone level, you end up seeing it clearer and it's just easier to understand, right? But I'd say simplistic thinking is probably more effective at specific times, such as maybe at the beginning, and maybe a bit later on, midway through, maybe not so much. Just depends how active, you know, how much movement is going on in a particular case in general, right? If it comes to a dead halt, right, a dead halt, where do you go from there outside of the box thinking? What about if you're in a situation where you've got a lot of material, it may have slowed down, but you've got a lot of material, a lot of thoughts, a lot of rumours, that's where simplistic thinking is necessary, right? Does it apply right here, right now? I'd probably say, kind of. We're basing it along the theme of trying to locate Dylan Rounds. Dylan Rounds still has not been found, correct? Right? I'll just flip the image a little bit so it makes it a bit easier for viewing. That should do. We focus on in wherever we want to be or need to be at. Right. There are endless possibilities, right, for where Dylan could be at. The type of environment, the named location, if it's near a named road, if it's in a wash, outside of a wash, mine shaft, mine, cave, in the open, buried in the ground. Buried in the ground has been the most, I don't know, talked about one and long-lasting thoughts, right, still to this day. Idea of mines, mine shafts have kind of dropped off ever since Lance Kelly has stopped with his searches for Dylan in those type of environments, like with Scott Natal, right? So I think that might have been one of the areas which was driving the ideas from there. Was there ever true proof to suggest Dylan was once here or once there? Not from what I can remember. There have been a few loose ends which were never tied up, which make you think, but But with all these different possibilities and outcomes to where Dylan could be, and just the sheer surface area of the place, surface area being as large as Miss T's Island. Not really. You can get tied up, you can get a bit conflicted. You get a bit of you can get a bit of a tiff, a bit of a tangle or something. You like Miss T, you're doing your crocheting or something, or Inky doing a knitting for a little pink gloves and oven mitts. Yeah, you need to unwind it slightly. You need to reverse back slowly and think, is there more of a simple solution or a simple way of thinking around this? And what Ty Corbin said about just simply maybe being left out in the open and then whatever taking place there and then being scattered. I would agree with Ty Corbin if we were talking about Aidan Clune, okay? Although we're further away and I can't find it on the spot. Cherry Creek, boom, I did find it on the spot. I can understand with Aidan Clune, walking out into the open, into nature or the rugged desert terrain, walking up to the point where maybe he just collapsed, succumbed to the environment, the temperatures, starvation, dehydration, whatever it may be at the time, right? Collapsing to the ground, no one else being involved, so not treated as a true crime case nor foul play at this moment in time, not being kidnapped supposedly either, no possibilities of being buried, caved in, rockfall. I don't think so. Not really seen it talked about too much, that part. But you just think walking in the open and then succumbing to the environment, let's just say, or if there was an animal attack for some reason, it just lead to falling on the ground and then being exposed and just left there. And then animals come along, wildlife, and, eat the remains and scatter the bones, right? To the point where there's probably nothing left, let's say, as an example. You go in the area, looking about, you don't see anything. Searching up some of the ravines, going up some of the canyons and springs, but no trace of Aidan past a certain point. Would then you need to be looking in caves, shallow caves, little dens where animals could have gone, taking the bones away and then dumping them there in that area where they sleep, hang out, possibly, right? So what I would say is with Ty Corbin, if it was ever a possibility with Dylan Rounds that he was just dumped out in the open and then scattered naturally with the presence of animals, let's say, then it would be like a follow-up, wouldn't it? So based on those conditions, then if you want to be looking for Dylan Rounds, you've got to probably be looking for caves and shallow ones and little dens where animals would gather, take their bones to their hideout, let's say, and then play with them or, I don't know, make use of them, whatever animals do with bones, right? Because if left out in the open and animals do eat the remains, they're not just going to leave it there, the bones. They're going to take them with them, most likely. Okay? And maybe you could reinforce it yourself with other missing people cases if you know of others out there that have just simply gone missing, not true crime related, presumed dead, and they've not been found because maybe they've been scattered their remains after succumbing to the environment. If that's happened before, then it could happen with Dylan Rounds, and you need to be looking in particular places. But based off that, with what Ty Corbin suggests, Lance Kelly has already done that, right? Lance Kelly going into those caves, even the very narrow ones where you'd think, well, Brenner wouldn't be able to fit in or Dylan wouldn't be able to fit in. Maybe that's true. But a bone of Dylan's could probably fit through the gap, right? If a full-sized Lance Kelly can fit in these tight areas, then the possibility some animals can as well. And if they just so happen to have a bone from Dylan Round's remains, which has been taken away to a different area, and then fit into the cave system or a small shallow den, and then disposes or dumps the bone there and then moves away and goes elsewhere after, right? So Lance Kelly based on the theme of coming across bones after bones after bones, and it's become a bit of a mockery in the eyes of some people in the Dylan Rounds case. You know, it could come that one time where Lance Kelly comes across a singular bone, an obvious human-looking sized one, or not so obvious, because it could be a smaller bone or a fragment, a piece of it, taken by an animal from the original area in the open of where Dylan was left, and then taken here where Lance Kelly is stationed at searching. People react to the video, call it BS, and then what? It ends like that. And because of the sheer amount of bones Lance Kelly has found over time, does it ever come to the point where not every bone is documented? That possibility? Let me know your thoughts. What was the last bone Lance Kelly found? Well, you might have found more since, but what I remember, and let me know if any of you remember in the live chat, the time where Lance Kelly, I think, did a short video or so. I think he did a short video alongside a full-length video. The short one was focused on a particular key highlight of the long video hike, where Lance Kelly came across a vertebrae. You remember that vertebrae? And then he had like a graph, a diagram of a comparison of a human vertebrae or a deer vertebrae and then another animal, trying to make sense of it. And then I did like a video myself analysing it. Does anyone remember that? Well, what happened? Did Lance Kelly ever give an update or not? Because dealing with bones out there can be a serious matter, but the sheer amount of them out there, because of the wildlife and all of that, you might get mixed up with them. You might get to that point where you think, wow, so many bones out here, you know, are the chances of coming across Dylan's bones amongst all these animal bones possible? Yeah, maybe, but it might be hard to think that way or to see it from that perspective at the time when you're there, or after you've seen so many bones only belong to animals and it being ruled out constantly if you have reported it in. But doesn't it become a bit awkward, right? At a point in time where you might have been searching all of this land close to the mountain area and closer to the farm, and in between, you know, you come across all these bones and you keep being hyper vigilant and you keep reporting it into the police. Does it get to a point where you might eventually find the next bone and it could be the bone or a bone of Dylan Rounds, but it just gets ruled out by the police immediately and they're like, can you stop calling in? We're sick of you wasting police time. And you just put that bone down and then that's it. And then that was Dylan's, right? If we're basing it off the concept that Dylan's remains are scattered because of animals, does it make it harder to put that point across to prove the case of your discovery upon finding a singular bone of Dylan's far away from, you know, where his remains are or the rest of the bones are? You get what I'm saying? So, a simplistic thought by Ty Corbin leading to a much deeper and more complex situation to be in if you were to have found a bone of Dylan's away from the rest. I think really, if you came across a big bone, you know, one of the bigger bones within the human body, then maybe you could report it to the police after all the other previous reports and then they would take it serious. If not that, finding a human skull. No doubt about it, if you find a human skull, a proper human skull, then it's going to raise eyebrows, it's going to point direction in that way, and then things go underway from there. Also, what I do want to ask, okay, mainly within lucin, but maybe it could apply to Montello as well. I guess maybe the focus is focused more on lucin in recent time, like with Lance Kelly. But what I want to say is, we talked about the possibilities of when will Dylan Rounds be found, now, years on, years much later, you know, when? We've already done that, right? My other question right now, and it can be as a poll, that format is, whilst people are out there, whoever, whatever, searching for Dylan Rounds, is there a possibility that remains or some remains might be found, but they're nothing to do with Dylan? In fact, another missing person. You think that's possible? Let me know in the chat right now in the vote, the poll. Leave your vote right now. Yes, possibilities that remains of somebody else could be found when looking for Dylan. No, no chance. Maybe. I don't know. Feel free to vote. I want to know your thoughts, okay? But yeah, what I would say personally, and we don't need to go into the whole story all over again, don't worry about that, but if Brenner took out Dylan Rounds, which seems to be likely the case, right? Whether anyone else was present or not, the disposure, some kind of disposing. You know, Brenner has been charged with desecration, right? Some form, okay? Some form of desecration, which you could assume or presume buried somewhere, right? If he's not out in the open, well, then where else can he be? In the ground somewhere. But then Ty Corbin would step on in and say, well, what about if Dylan was just left out in the open, then scattered, then disappeared, and was spread out so much that it'd be like finding a needle in a haystack, even harder than finding a singular buried body somewhere, maybe. Guess it depends how you look at it, because to be fair, when you do think about it, if the remains are scattered, it's like, well, where the hell do you go? Where the hell do you go? You're just going all over the place, right? But you're not having to rely on one particular spot. The accuracy is more lenient when the remains are scattered, right? When you're looking for, like, the corpse, the remains of a person, whole, complete, so buried in the ground, you got to find that pinpoint spot, pinpoint coordinates, right? No room for error or mistake. But when it comes to bones being scattered, you know, whilst you're looking presumably for the full remains of a person, you may stumble across one. You may stumble across one bone which belongs to them, and that is a small victory in its own right. So sometimes it can turn out a little bit better if it is based off that idea. But does anyone honestly think that Brenner would just take Dylan out and think, right, I'm going to drag you somewhere, because that would explain the blood on his shirt and sleeves. I'm going to drag you away from the grain shed, and then I'm just going to dump you near to the dirt mound or just on the field here, the desert area, and then that's it. My job's done. I walk away. Part of me doesn't think so. Like, what we need to take into account right now, and it's very important, so make sure you're focusing. Dylan taken out on the 28th. Let's just say that Brenner disposed of Dylan on the 28th as well, under the conditions what Ty Corbin suggested, dragging him somewhere and dumping him in the open. Let's say here, okay? Not saying it is the case, but just as a suggestion. Here, where it's a bit flat, the ground. Dylan's just left out there, face down in the ground, or face up, whichever, dead or bleeding out. What happens then? How long does it take from then, the 28th of May 2022, for Dylan's remains to fully decompose and or the length of time for animals, wildlife to come along and then start eating away at the remains and taking the bones away and then scattering Dylan as a whole? How long does that take? A couple of days? A week? Maybe longer? Let me know your thoughts right now, because let's say it took a week or so. 28th Saturday, 29th Sunday, Monday. Am I getting the dates correct? Yeah, Monday, then Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I believe by then already you've had the flyby, you've already had the search and rescue come on down, or the family come on down to check on in to see where Dylan is at, right? In that short space of time, people have come on down. on the 5th of June, you had a flyby, helicopters flying over the area, surveying it. You had Heavy D and his crew flying over the area, surveying it, and they did not find Dylan Rounds, just flat out in the open. You get what I'm saying? If it just took like 3 days pushing it for remains to decompose or to be completely scattered like that and no chance of finding them, in that short span of time, if that was the case, then I could understand how helicopters and flybys couldn't find Dylan at that point, even that early on. But I just don't think, I think it takes a bit longer for the scattering to take place. But correct me if I'm wrong down below, get a better idea at the end of the day. But then again, you had that supposed thing that happened, which still I'm a little bit confused about, where Heavy D's crew flew on over. Footage of the original video was deleted, removed, edited out because they supposedly came across another dead person out in the open, face down in the ground in Lucin. I mean, that would tie in with Ty Corbin's talk, you know, about maybe Dylan was just left out in the open and scattered that way, possibly. But really, if Heavy D did come across Dylan Rounds that early on, way back at the start, the case in general just wouldn't be going on to this point where the family still don't know where Dylan is at. So it wouldn't have been Dylan. But a bit of a coincidence if we're basing it off the theme and topic, right? I'll just give you my thoughts, right? It all comes down to like the discussion tonight, what I asked, the questions about how long does it take to decompose, how long does it take for a body to be scattered by wildlife in the open, how long does it take? And then I can give you my true conclusion from there, okay? One thing that I would say though is to look back in a more simplistic way. It's probably harder for some people to do when a case has gone on this long and we've learned over time what supposedly has happened, and processing all the information to like walk away from that seems like the reverse thing, you know, what you shouldn't be doing. Sometimes it is necessary. Is it necessary here though? Maybe with some stuff. I feel that Brenner must have taken Dylan somewhere at least for Brenner to have Dylan's blood upon him. Hands, arms, shirt, dragging him up close, dragging him in the corner of the grain shed, dragging him into a hole somewhere, right? I can understand Dylan being buried somewhere, because if you've looked over and over again in the open, walking up and down, and not a single trace of Dylan, literally, as for physical remains, then the only other way is underneath, under the surface somewhere, right? But the possibility of being scattered, yeah, maybe more likely over time, like with Aid and Clune. But if there's a fast response rate, people coming on down, kind of like Dylan Rounds, you thought they would have come across Dylan before the animals had full opportunity to dispose of him. If you disagree, leave your thoughts down below. If you got your own comments or questions, leave them in the comments section. As well, I forgot to say, if you haven't checked my previous videos out, I actually did 2 yesterday, as well as the day before, and maybe the day before that. I've been very busy, right? Feel free to check them out. Some serious ones and some more light-hearted ones, some ASMR healing. Well, healing for some people, torture for others. But if you're interested in any of that, the links are down below in the pinned comment section, along with additional links if you want to support the channel. I think at this moment in time, it rounds it up with the Dylan Rounds case. As I said, unless something very unexpected happens very shortly, twist, turns, burst of information, new direction, point of view that needs to be assessed, or maybe past events that need recovering, reclarifying, enhancing, debunking. That's welcome as well. I can't think of them on the spot because I've not looked at all the BS and rumours. But if you have, and if you still feel that a little bit of suspicion or questioning around this, besides the likes of the blue Jubilee truck on the 28th, leave comments down below and maybe they can be covered in a future video. I think for now, it's time to go. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. See you next time. Goodbye and good night.